Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're going to do another standalone that's a part of a series. Now, the name of the series is called Limitless Sweet Billionaire Romance Series. It's by a new author to the channel, Tamie Dearen, and we're going to review book one, The Billionaire's Secret Marriage. Now, at the end of this review, I'm going to give a little tidbit that I hope you find interesting about the author and what kind of inspired this story. We meet Stephanie Caldwell, and we find out that she is an assistant to a man who's like super successful, like a gazillionaire. His name is Branson Knight, and Stephanie is in his private restroom. They're in his mansion. She's got puffy eyes, and she's trying to get herself together because she's been crying. So someone comes to the door, jerks it, and she says, "I'll be right out." They jerk again, and we find out it's her boss. It's Branson. So she goes ahead and opens the door, and we find out that Branson is blind. And so that's why she felt it was okay to go ahead and come out, because he can't see her face. So she's upset because she's been in love with her boss for 2 years. And he invited her to this annual spring gala. She thought it meant that something was changing, right? The relationship maybe he really does feel something for her, is what she thought. Well, that's not what it was for. He even had her get a dress on his account, all this type of stuff. And the reason he brought her was because he wanted to find out the expressions of everyone there when he made an announcement about a merger that he's going to be doing, as well as his engagement to a woman named Karina. So she kind of says to him, like, "You didn't tell me you were going to be making that announcement, you know?" And he says, well, it wasn't a big deal. So he does not consider the engagement a big deal. And she's like, "What do you mean it's not a big deal? It's an engagement. You're getting married." And he was just kind of like, Karina did a last minute thing wanting to announce it at the gala. And he wanted to push it further out. And so him and Karina have been kind of dating for about a year, kind of off and on. And this marriage is also the completion of this merger. So she winds up thinking about our girl, Stephanie. She's thinking about quitting. Because even though she needs her job, because she has a daughter named Ellie, she's very sick, and her medication is super expensive. This is becoming too much for her to bear. So she had made a comment to him when he kind of made it appear with the engagement that this was not about anything to do with any type of love. She kind of says, well, if it's not about love, why not just get an escort? And he makes the comment, why? What are your rates? And that's when she goes, I'll just quit. She goes, take this as my 2 weeks. And he's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it, blah, blah, blah. We find out that he's offered her the opportunity to move into the mansion and have her own quarters. And it actually would help her a lot financially. But for her, it's just that's too close to being around him. Like, she already has these, emotional attachments to him, and she works for him. Now her actual living will be around him as well. It's like overload. She doesn't think she can really survive that. However, it's starting to look a little better because the medication that she's paying for her daughter, the insurance doesn't cover it. And so she's got to come out of pocket, and it's starting to drain her financially. So it actually would make sense for her to go ahead and move in. It really would. So as they're talking, in comes three guys. These also happen to be his best friends, Finn, Cole, and Jarrett. We find out they are all partners and for this charity. Well, the name of the company I think that they have is called Phantom something, but they also created this charity called Limitless, and it helps kids with disabilities. So all of them have a disability. We have Branson, who is blind. Jarrett has a prosthetic leg. He had cancer as a child, and that's how he lost it. Cole has a prosthetic hand, and Finn has cystic fibrosis. So they all have something, a disability. And they met at this computer camp for kids with disabilities, and they've been tight ever since. So Karina chooses that time to come in, and she, of course, is whining, like, where have you been? Like, people are, wondering where you are. And the guys take this opportunity to kind of lure Stephanie away and kind of get the 411 on Karina, because they don't think this is a good idea for him getting married. He's a part of the company. It's called Phantom Enterprises. And so they're like, we don't need Branson doing something that could, not only F up his life, but also the business. And so Branson is like, she's going to sign a prenup. And so when Karina comes in saying everyone's looking for you, she's able to get him out of there. And Stephanie is now left with the three best friends. We then switch to Branson's POV. I love when we do that. So he wakes up the next morning and we find out he has a butler. I don't know what all. He plays so many roles. He's a butler, he's a father figure, confidant, all kind of things. And this guy named Fordham. And he's had Fordham in his life since he was a child. And so Fordham doesn't baby Branson. Branson's won his shoes and socks, and so he says, well, you know where they are, get them. But he wants them brought to him and sat on the bed, which is what Stephanie normally does. But Fordham's not going to do that, So they have a conversation, and we find out that Branson wanted Fordham to, come around him and the people that were at the party, but Fordham prefers to be around the people that work there, as they say, the help. He prefers that. He doesn't really do rich and snobby. Now, Fordham is not broke, okay? Branson pays him very well. But he doesn't like snobby rich people. He just doesn't. And he doesn't sound 100%, and it kind of worries Branson because, again, Fordham is like a father to him, because he doesn't have a good relationship with his actual father. And so Fordham's like, I just had too much of that decadent dessert. That's all. No worries. So we find out that he is trying to build up this hotel chain by merging, and that it's going to make him bigger than his father's hotel chain. So we clearly see if he doesn't have a good relationship with his father and he's trying to take over what is I'm not going to say take over what his father's done, but surpass his father. I got a good idea. We have a good idea why. He's got daddy issues. Okay. So he was saying that Fordham, that he was really hurt that Branson didn't tell him about the engagement. And he says, because it's really not important. And he didn't intend on making the announcement at that party. But I guess because Fordham is his confidant, it did kind of make him feel some type of way. And I can kind of understand that. We're supposed to be close. And then there's this major thing you're doing and you don't tell me. I can understand him feeling some type of way. And we also find out he's been keeping his friends from Stephanie. And Fordham says, I thought you were actually in love with Stephanie. So once the conversation goes to this, Branson starts stuttering. Branson starts, "Oh no, he's not having this discussion. It's nothing like that. She's just my assistant, X, Y, and Z." Now he's ready to go run his normal 10 miles a day. Yes, 10 miles is what he runs on the treadmill. He only operates on 4 hours of sleep. That's it. Doesn't seem too healthy, but that's what he does. While he's running, he goes back and he thinks to a story of when he first met Stephanie, when he hired her. And so he knew that her daughter had her daughter is Ellie, that she had cystic fibrosis, and that was part of the reason why he hired her. He also liked that she had genuine concern for him. Like she notices that he looks really tired and haggard, and she says it's not normal for people to sleep 4 hours. And he says we can do that because we don't there is no light and dark, there's just dark, you know so we don't have that same internal clock. And then she says, she's going to do a little bit more research because there's things that you can take for that. And he's like, "I'm not taking any drugs." He's very like health conscientious. We find out that he lost his sight from cancer. It was in one eye at first, and the mother was terrified that the radiation that was needed would kill him, and so she figured it was better for him to go blind than for him to be dead. So when the other eye went out, he was blind. The father felt like it would have been better off if he was dead. So we see why they have such a horrible relationship, and we see why he's trying to get his father's approval. Um, that's because that's a hell of a task to overcome. Someone wishing you were dead because of your ailment. You know what I mean? That's a lot. So we find out his mom died when he was 7. The rumor is that she flung herself off the building. He thinks it was because she had a disabled son and she'd rather die than deal with it. I don't know if that's the situation. I don't know if it could have been also guilt. Because remember, she's the one that made the decision not for him to not have the radiation on his first eye. So, I mean, I'm guessing just like he is. Hopefully we'll find out. We'll see. So we find out that he's kind of become addicted to having her around. He loves having her around. And he feels like he's a better person. He's not he's broken. That's his the way he views himself. And when he's around her, she doesn't allow him to feel that way. She's like, you can't think like that. That's not who you are, this and that. So it's something he's kind of come to depend on, and he's a little addicted to hearing it. He knows he feels something for her, but he's not sure what it is because he feels like he's not capable of love, and I think that's why he's ruled out that he's not in love with her. But baby, when you're dependent on a person to be around, like you need them, like if you feel like if you don't have them around, something's just completely off, honey. That's another level. But he's not thinking that way. He probably just sees it as, "Oh, this is just another weakness I have, that I'm becoming dependent on someone else." You know what I mean? After his run, he's eating his steel oatmeal, his Greek yogurt, very plain, basic meal, and he's hearing his friends in the kitchen, like laughing and having a good time. So he winds up going in there with them, and he's like, "Why aren't you guys out here with me?" And they're like, "Well, since you were 16, you don't like for anyone to be around you when you're eating. Like, you prefer to eat in silence and be to yourself." Well, they don't know. The kitchen staff knows, but they're not saying anything. But he's become used to having someone around, and normally that person is Stephanie. And so now it's like he doesn't want to just be by himself. But again, his homeboys, they don't know that. So eventually they come and they sit down with him. And the reason they kind of came up with the scheme for the event is because They did want to get to try and know Stephanie, but because she worked so closely with him, they wanted to know what's been going on with him for the past couple of years. So they used to talk about everything, him and the guys. But these last couple of years, it's like he's changed. He used to be into like extreme sports. He was very much about trying to prove that he could do anything that a sight person can do. He really did just love life. And he would tell the kids at the Limitless Foundation that, don't withdraw into yourself. And as they're talking, Branson is realizing that the very things he's been telling these kids not to do, he's been doing himself. So the guys have come up with a plan. You're going to Las Vegas with us. Stephanie's already shown us that your schedule is clear, so you can't do any rebuttals. So then Fordham comes in and tells Branson that Stephanie has decided she is going to move in. And inside, he's excited because this is what he's been wanting for a long time, for her to move in. And so he's talking about the cystic fibrosis, and Finn thought that he was saying that Stephanie had it, and he kind of saw Finn get excited. And so he immediately said, no, but it's her daughter, because Finn has cystic fibrosis, and the prognosis is not necessarily a long life. And so he wanted to kill that light within Finn really quickly. And so Fordham tells him, yeah, Stephanie said basically that she was having financial hardships. And so, of course, Branson is like, I pay her really well. And he's like, yes, but the new drug that's out that's really helping her, it's really expensive and the insurance doesn't cover it. And so Finn is like, yeah, I heard about that. It's $300,000 a year for that drug. I take it. And he's like, it was something that I wanted to actually bring up, because we can't afford to give it away to every child, but maybe there's some type of way we can help with that. So he, of course, tells Fordham, tell her she can choose whatever day she wants to move in. He's happy, you know. And so he also, Fordham tells him, I have another message for you. Karina is in the foyer, and she wants to know where to put her stuff. So she has assumed, since they're engaged, she's going to be moving in. And Branson's like, she's not staying in my room. Like, this isn't happening. So Branson has only slept with this woman one time. So they don't have like this ongoing sexual relationship, which is very shocking to his friends. So he's like, let me go deal with this. And the name of the nanny for Ellie is Lori. So she's going to be moving in as well. So we switch back to Stephanie's POV. It's move-in day. Her and Lori moving stuff. Stephanie's has a flashback to when she had her interview. She came to this very house. And when she sat down for the interview, he had these, intense blue eyes. They just stare right at you. She thought he could see. Girl had no idea that he was blind. So when he asked her to, like, part of her job would be, like, help pick out clothes and stuff, she looked at him like, what? Like, I'm not doing any menial task for you, And she gets up to leave, and he tells her, like, I'm blind. I actually need you to be able to do that for me. And she says, prove it. Because she just could not believe that he was blind. So he pulls out his cane. She's like, anyone could do that. He's like, do I need to pop out my prosthetic eye? She's like, no, 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 no. So when she moved her hand in front of his face and he didn't react, she realized, oh, he really is blind. So she thought she'd screwed up the interview. And she's like, oh my gosh, let me leave. And he's like, you're disgusted, right? And she said, no, I put my foot in my mouth. I know you're not going to hire me now. And he goes, when can you start? And so that's how she got the job. So Karina pops in, and Lori was saying you know, that we're supposed to take our stuff to the East Wing, right? And Karina goes, "Oh, no, 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 no. You guys are going to be in the West Wing." They have this back and forth. Fordham comes up and he says, "I thought you all were in the East Wing." And Karina says, "Well, Branson told me I could have whichever one I chose, and I chose East." And Fordham says, "Well, the East Wing, you don't need the whole wing." And she says, "Well, I really don't like children running around." And so Stephanie's like, "Fine, because I don't want anyone who doesn't like children around, you know?" So her and Lori go unpacking the West Wing, and she tells Lori the truth about the contract. 'Cause she had told the woman, Karina, that, she had an ironclad contract. Because Karina kind of was hinting at, I could get you fired. And she had to let Lori know, I really don't have his ironclad contract. Um, but Branson is not gonna fire her. But again, you got to remember, Karina and Branson are supposed to be getting married, and she has this illusion of what their relationship is. Even after he's saying it's just business, she still has this illusion. So in her mind, this woman has pull with Branson, and she decides she's gonna go and she's gonna apologize to Karina for her actions earlier, because she'll do anything for her child. We switch to Branson, and he gets a phone call from Finn. And Finn just basically wants to know what's really going on. He's like, "Are you really marrying this girl?" And he brought up, like, "Why didn't you consider marrying Stephanie? Because clearly you have feelings for her." And he just was like, again, debunking the whole being crazy about Stephanie. But then he did say that he was dependent on Stephanie, and that he didn't like the fact that he was dependent on her. He feels as if people only want him for his money, and that he's detestable to look at. Yes, he has a nice body, but his face, his eyes, they scare people. And he knows it's the truth because his dad has told him this, and so has Karina. So Finn is like, "So why are you marrying Karina?" He says she's honest. She's blatantly honest. So then we get the real reason. Karina's family owns the company that's making the expensive cystic fibrosis drug that's helping both Finn and Ellie. And so when they get married, she's supposed to sign over her shares, which would then give Branson controlling share at 51%. And now he can control the price of that drug. He can bring it down. So Finn is now conflicted, right? This is a great thing that he wants to do. But he doesn't want his friend to sacrifice his happiness. But Branson has already decided that he's not going to have that type of happy ending. He's not going to be loved, and he kind of turns it on Finn, and he's like, "Finn, why don't you date?" And Finn says, "I don't have a lot of time left. Why would I want to get involved with someone, marry someone just to leave them?" And Branson says, "But you're going to leave us, and we're your family." He says, "Yeah, but someone new coming in, that's a short period of time they'll have with me, and I don't think it's fair to them." So he tells them we're still going to Vegas, and he says that, you can't get out of it. Now, we don't know if Karina's going to go. She hasn't decided. Branson brought it up to her. She doesn't know. She's still going back and forth. We switch to the next day. He's in the office talking with Stephanie, and Stephanie apologizes for not congratulating him on his engagement, and she winds up telling him, she thinks Karina will be good for him and all this type of stuff. And he's like, "Wait a minute, where's this coming from? This doesn't sound right." She says, "Well, I might have misjudged her. He's like, "No, you weren't singing this same tune." So he grabs her. He wants her, like, "Tell me the truth. Tell me the truth. When you look at me, what do you see?" And he says, "What do you feel?" And he was wanting her to say like disgusted, like all these type of things. And she says she feels unloved, desperate, alone, and she runs away. He goes, alone? What is she talking about? Like, where did that come from? We switch back to Stephanie's POV, and she's freaking out, taking a deep breath, and Karina pops up. And she apologizes to her, and she lets her know she'll be her advocate. She'll talk her up. She'll do all this type of stuff. Um, Karina's not fully buying it. She tells her she's on her way to get Branson some coffee. She'll get her some. She had heard her order one time, and so she remembered it. She'll bring it into the office. So when she goes into the office, Karina's laid out on the couch, and he's dictating, and he's like, here are the recordings for her to listen and type them up. And so she's doing that. Time flies by. It's 2 o'clock. She didn't even realize that Karina was gone. So Karina got bored and wanted him to take her shopping. He doesn't like demands. He told her, just take yourself shopping. And so she went shopping. He hears Stephanie's stomach grumble. And so he's like, it's lunchtime. They go and eat. She's telling him stories about Ellie, how excited she's going to be when she gets home from school, and, you know, having her own room, because apparently in the apartment they were staying in, they had to share a bed. And she's thinking that telling him the story is like, oh shoot, I should be telling him this. And he tells her, no, I like your stories, you know? And he admitted about being dependent on her and how he sees that as a weakness. And she said, well, I don't. You know, I don't see that as a weakness. And he's like, but I look at you and you don't depend on anyone. And she said, yes, I do. She said, I had a no good husband who left me with a child because he couldn't handle the diagnosis. And I've needed Lori to help me. I've needed this job. Like, I've needed help. I haven't done this on my own. There's nothing wrong with needing people. So then he asked her to come with him to Vegas. And he confides in her he's been having panic attacks when it's time for him to be around large crowds. And so at first she thought he was going to like give her this undying love speech, but he didn't. It was like business purposes kind of to help him. And she doesn't like to leave Ellie, but he's like, it'll only be for 24 hours. Lori's here with her. I'll give you an extra week of vacation. And she said, okay, she'll go. And so we know Karina's going to go now that Stephanie's going. So then Branson tells Stephanie that they're going to take Finn's jet. And they'll say that Finn is on a date with Stephanie. And she's just kind of like, well, okay, she'll go along with it. So then later on, we switch to Branson's POV, and his father comes to visit him, Martin Knight. And he apparently has found out about the engagement, and he also came by with a proposition. So he says he'll give $250 million in a trust for his first sighted legitimate grandchild. Branson, of course, lost it because that's a huge slight to him, saying that the child has to be, has to have sight. And he told him, he lost it. He's like, get out, get out. So he leaves, but unfortunately, Branson knows the last thing his father said was, think about it. And Branson knows, unfortunately, that's exactly what he's going to do. His mind is going to think about it. So it's early morning. It's like 5 or 6 a.m. Stephanie's out front waiting. And she gave Ellie a hug and everything before she left and told her she'd get her a gift, all that type of stuff, as well as Fordham is going to take her on a tour of the whole house. I'm sorry, mansion, because that's what that is. So then Finn comes up to her, and her and Finn have a little chat, and he puts his hand on her knee, and she kind of looked at him like, what are you doing? And he's just like, well, if we're going to convince Karina that we're a couple, we got to kind of play into it. So eventually she got a little comfortable and she leaned into him. And she hasn't like been like leaned on a man, done anything with a man since her divorce. And that was like 5 years ago. It's been a super long time. And so he's shocked by that. Finn is like, "Are you serious?" He's like, "Yeah." She's like, "No, it's been that long." So then eventually Karina and Branson come up. Of course, they're late because of Karina. Karina makes a comment, "Oh, look at the lovebirds." And I'm so like, this is going to be such a mess. They wind up taking Branson's PJ, and he says he wants to do that. He's like, "We need work. There's work we have to do and all this type of stuff," him and Stephanie. So Stephanie's really excited because this is her first time going to Vegas. And Finn is, of course, being kind of close to Stephanie. And based on what Karina's saying with, "Oh, how cute they look," and this and that, Branson is clearly disturbed by this. But it's like, that's how sometimes you have people that they don't know they feel anything until someone else comes along. But he's always been very protective of her. He doesn't want her around anyone. Like, all of the signs are kind of there, but because he has that warped reality of, "I can never be loved, I'm not capable of loving," he doesn't see it as that. Like, that just doesn't even cross his mind because it's not possible. They get to Vegas. We find out there's going to be a charity event later that evening. And Branson's going to try to lose his money super fast so that way he can sneak off to the room and stay away from everyone. And so Finn and the guys, they of course don't really want to have to hang out with Karina. They really don't. But they do, but he does want to try and get Branson to stay longer and to like be around him. So he kind of knows that's the ploy that Branson's gonna try and do, is lose the money and sneak away. And Finn's not gonna let that happen because this is the first time they've gotten him out in over 2 years, and so they're gonna make it count. So Stephanie says, she'll stay behind with Finn and the guys because she likes hanging out with them. They were fun. Even when they were like questioning her about stuff, she still liked them. They all have, pretty good personalities. Branson feels some type of way by her saying that, but he doesn't say anything. So then Finn says about how Finn lives in New York City and he wants to take Stephanie to a Broadway show. And Stephanie's like, "Oh my gosh, that's so neat." Now Branson's pissed off. And now Branson goes, "Well, they have shows here. We can go take in a show here." And so Karina gets upset because she's like, "I told you I wanted to go to a show and you said you didn't like them." So Stephanie tried to make it seem like he wanted to go for Karina. She tried to play it up because clearly something's off. It had nothing to do with Karina. This was all about Stephanie. But remember, she said she was going to do everything in her power to play up Karina so that Karina doesn't come after her and try and ruin her job, you know? But clearly Branson does not want Finn alone with Stephanie. So they get up to the rooms, and he used to be able to kind of map out a room in like 60 seconds and kind of memorize everything, but he's having a pretty hard time navigating this room. He had to go back and forth like a few times. And they're going to go to lunch and then they're going to go to the show. So Stephanie comes out. Finn tells her how beautiful she looks, and it kind of gets to Branson because he can't see her. He knows that if they keep communicating, they could fall in love with each other. And even though he wants his friend Finn to be happy, he feels like, "I just cannot lose Stephanie." So in his mind, he depends on her for everything. She's like his heir. I'm like, baby, if she's like heir, that's love. But again, he just doesn't realize it. And it's clearly not just functional things that he needs her for, clearly. So then she winds up giving him these uh like dictation earphones, mics that she uses, so that way she can kind of talk to him to kind of soothe him, because he did confide in her that he was having the panic attacks when he gets around the large groups. So she's has a scarf that she has on, and it's kind of disguised within the scarf, and so that way she can talk into it. No one will be all the wiser, and he'll be comfortable. I thought that was really sweet, because she really was thinking about his comfort. Karina seems to be fishing for compliments, and so much so that when Finn gave her like this backhanded compliment, she was just happy with it. And so Stephanie kind of tells him, you need to be nicer to her. You need to pay more attention to her. That's why she's getting these attitudes. So when they get in to the vehicle, well, the limo, he says, let me sit by my fiance. And he holds her hand, and she immediately is all happy. Karina is. And he's like, wow, okay, Stephanie was right. But then it just proves that, I'm sorry, he then thinks that just proves that Stephanie doesn't feel anything for me, because she's trying to make sure I'm happy with Karina. I'm clearly just her employer, and that's it. I also forgot to mention that when they first got there, Finn was like, if you, in order for me to back off, you got to admit to me you're in love with her. And of course he wouldn't do. Of course he's talking about with Stephanie, and Branson wouldn't do it. And he said, well, then she's fair game. I'm going after her. And I think he's serious, because Stephanie's such a like good-hearted person, and so is Finn. It makes perfect sense of how they could, connect. We switch back to Stephanie's POV, and she's a little upset because her plan worked a little too well. Because now he's like all up with Karina, and it's pissing her off. Definitely made her feel jealous. So then when they get to the place, they're getting their food, she realizes she really doesn't need to talk to him anymore. He seems fine, so she turns off the device. And that's when Finn sees it, and he, of course, is like, what is it? And she says, come with me, and then I'll tell you what it is. So she takes him away from the table, and she tells him what it is. And he's like, oh, okay. And she also got on him, because she said, why didn't you take him skiing, something outdoors? Why didn't you do that? Why did you bring him to something with like so many people? And the other guys were like, I think she was just talking to Finn actually at this point. And she went off on Finn, like, if anything happens to him, she's going to feed him to the dogs. So after the lunch, they go to the matinee, and all the guys, Jared, Cole, um, what's the other one's name? It'll come to me later. They come up to him, and I'm sorry, up to Stephanie, and they're just kind of like, Cole wanted to go skiing, so he did want to do something outside, outdoorsy, because he kind of recognized that's what they used to do before, and he thought that would have been good. However, he was like, this time of year it is kind of crowded there as well. But they're apologetic to her. Um, Cole and Jared, they're apologetic. They're saying, Finn is sorry too. So eventually Finn comes up with a sad look on his face, and she says, well, you're forgiven for now, but you're all on probation. So they all get dressed up, they go down, and Stephanie goes down with Jared, Cole and Finn to the casino. And Finn lets everyone know that he's working on some type of scheme to break up Karina and Branson. He says that he thinks Karina is stealing from him, but he can't prove it. And he needs Stephanie to be on the lookout for anything with Karina when they get back home to the house. And Stephanie's like, I'm not trying to get involved with that because I'm not trying to lose my job. Like, that's not happening. So she goes upstairs because the shoes she's wearing are like some 5-inch heels. They're killing her feet. And she's also trying to get away from Finn because Finn kind of put it out there that he saw that she had feelings for Branson. She denied it, of course. And she takes that opportunity to like get away from him. So when she goes upstairs, she meets this really nice couple in the elevator. Um, and then she changes her shoes, and when she comes out, she sees Karina and Branson coming out. It looks like they've just had sex because Karina's dress is down and she's asking him to pull it up, like to zip it up, and she can see her thumb. But I'm like, that doesn't necessarily mean that if they're just getting ready. Like, you already know Karina takes a day and forever to get ready. So that doesn't really mean that. But I think when you're looking for anything to kind of justify you trying to pull yourself away from a situation, you'll think it. So I just think that's kind of what she's doing. So Branson seems annoyed that he's got to do this for her. And so this is a contrast from what she saw earlier in the limo. And she felt like he had kind of been ignoring her and giving all his attention to Karina. Well, then, as they're walking, because she winds up walking along with them, she felt super pathetic because it's like, here she is in love with this man, and you know, he's with this high maintenance woman. She's clearly in his class. I'm not. She's like, drawing all the differences between them and why she's nothing and this is this somebody type of person, just beating her post self up. I felt so bad for the girl. So they finally get down there. They're playing craps. She doesn't understand what's going on. Jarrett tried to explain it to her, and she's talking to Branson, just kind of trying to calm him down because he looks like he was on the verge of a panic attack once they started getting around a ton of people. She sees people staring at her and she thinks it's because she's so out of place. And Jarrett just looks at her when she makes that comment and he says, Sweetie, they're looking at you because how beautiful you are. And she couldn't accept it. She's like, no, they're not. They're staring at Karina, not me. They're making a contrast to how I don't look like her, all this type of stuff. And so Karina had made this nasty statement to Stephanie. Um, I forgot to mention this when they were in the elevator. Stephanie had complimented Karina's dress, and Karina was like, yeah, I'm only going to wear it once, and then I'm going to get rid of it. And Stephanie's like, that's such a waste. And she's like, well, I'll give it to people who can't afford it. And she says, I couldn't give it to you because it wouldn't fit you. This pissed off Branson because he was like, why would you say something like that? And she's like, oh, I wasn't saying it as a dig to her. It was a dig to myself because I'm too thin. And he clearly wasn't buying it. But I forgot to mention that when they were going down the elevator. So Stephanie is talking him through as they're walking through a more quieter area. And she's thanking him for bringing her on the trip and how much she's enjoyed herself. And the last thing um, that she hopes for Ellie is that she'll be able to see this place. And she's going to put it on Ellie's bucket list. And he just really appreciates how appreciative she is for everything. So they get back to this quieter place, and Karina doesn't like it back there because there's not a lot of people, which means she's not the center of attention, right? Not a lot of people can look at her, and that's what she needs. She needs eyes on her. And she starts whispering to Branson about how she would like to have a physical relationship with him again. So we find out the one time they had sex, she freaked out about his eyes. She said she was scared they were going to pop out. I was like, oh my gosh. She tells him, you have an amazing body though. She's like, I love your body. It's just that your eyes freak me out. She's like, maybe if you close them, I'll be okay. And he tells her, no, we're not doing that again. She tells him 3 years is a long time for me to abstain. And she also, what did she say to him? She also told him, you and Stephanie, that's got to stop too. And he's like, what are you talking about? And he says, me and Stephanie, we're not having sex. You know what I mean? That's nothing, our relationship is nothing like that. Stephanie hears this, and yes, this is just one more thing of, see, I knew he didn't feel anything for me. So now Karina wants to leave, and she's like, Stephanie, come with me. And she's like, no, I'll stay with here with Mr. Branson. She's like, no, he'll be fine. You come with me. So she goes with her, and he can hear a little bit of the conversation. He's trying to like play craps and listen at the same time. And what he does wind up hearing is Stephanie saying, after Karina had asked her if she had some type of feeling for him, Stephanie, of course, said, no, he's my boss. I need my job, X, Y, and Z. So then now we have him saying, I knew she didn't feel anything. And Finn can see he's trying now to lose, right? He's trying to get from down here and get back up to his room. And Finn says, oh, no, 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 no. We're not doing that. You're going to play for real. And then he starts winning. Branson does. And now more people are starting to come around. So as the crowd's coming and it gets too many, Branson decides he wants to take a break. Karina comes up to him and she's like, we need to talk. And so she takes him outside and he's put his glasses on because she doesn't like looking in his eyes, right? And she tells him, we've got to get married right away. Daddy just called me and told me someone's buying up stocks. And Parker is on the verge of a possible takeover. So we've got to get married. He's like, I don't like this. Something doesn't feel right. He's feeling pushed. He doesn't do pushed. You know, he already he gave in to her with the engagement announcement, but this is different. And with these decisions, because, you know, you can make an announcement that you're getting married and not get married. Let's just be very clear. But this is a different ball game, right? And so he's like, this doesn't make sense of why you're trying to push this. He's like, you haven't even signed the prenup. And she's like, yes, I did. I e-signed it 30 minutes ago. And so she's like, I'm going to go get Finn so he can talk to you. Because she, of course, wasn't getting through. So I guess she was going to try and convince Finn. But I'm like, Finn don't even like you. He's going to be even harder to convince. So now Branson's starting to panic. He's by himself, unfamiliar territory. And so he winds up having to call Stephanie via cell phone because the thing's turned off. And so she eventually answers, and when he tells her that he's by himself, Karina left him alone, she says, that's it. I'm about to give her a piece of my mind. So she turned the device on again, and she was pissed. She was absolutely pissed. She's like, I'm probably going to lose my job for what I'm about to do, but I don't care. I have had it with her. So now we switch to Stephanie's POV and we find out what happened from the time that Karina took her. Okay. So when they walked off, Karina told Stephanie that the reason she's been really snarky and stuff is because she recently found out that she can't have children due to some heart condition. And it just kind of breaks her heart whenever she sees her because she's a mother. It works. Stephanie bought it. However, they're at the slots while they're talking, and it seems like the old Karina's coming back, right? The little nasty one is starting to come back. And she tells Stephanie, you really baby him and he doesn't need that, and I don't treat him that way, and that's what he needs. Tone switching up, right? So then Karina gets a phone call. She leaves. And not too long after that is when she gets the phone call. Well, a little while later, she gets that phone call from Branson. So when Branson calls her and lets her know that he's by himself, she's pissed off at the slots. And she's like, she's going to tear this bitch off. She's going to like tear her apart. So she went looking for her, couldn't find her at first. And then when she did see her, she wound up twisting her ankle. And so she calls out for Jared because she sees Finn, Cole, Jay. She sees them walking out. And she yells for Jared. He sees her. He comes and gets her. And he winds up picking her up because she could barely walk. And so when they get up to where Branson, Karina, Finn, Cole are, Karina makes the statement, oh, so now you're sweet on Jared? I guess you're just sweet on whatever billionaire is available since Branson's taken. And so then Finn goes, you know what, Karina, you're right. He gets on his knee and he proposes to Stephanie. Branson, of course, goes, okay, your point's made. No one's getting married tonight. It was a stupid idea. I get it. And Finn says, no, I'm serious. He says, you're marrying Karina. This has nothing to do with you. And Branson goes, that's my assistant. You're trying to steal her away from me. And Karina's like, why would it matter? This shouldn't bother you. So they wind up going back and forth. And Stephanie starts to think, does he feel something? But then he makes the comment, I forbid this. And that's when she goes, Finn, I accept. And I'm like, oh, hell. So now Finn and Branson are arguing. Cole and Jared are just watching. She's yelling at them saying, like, why are you guys just watching? Like, stop this. Like, this could ruin their friendship. And the guys are like, they've been doing this forever. Finn knows how far to push him before he pushes him over the edge. So then we switch to Branson's POV. And they're not really fighting. They're just kind of fussing back and forth. And here's what's going on. So when Stephanie hurt herself, he didn't realize she had hurt herself. But when Finn was like, the reason Jared was carrying her because she hurt her ankle, his first reaction was, how did she hurt herself? Where is she? We got to get her to a hospital. Like, full panic. So Finn realizes the situation is worse than what he had thought. And the reason him and the guys ever came out to the gala was because Fordham had called them and was like, I'm worried about it. Something's wrong. And that's why they even got involved. Because I think they were just kind of like, okay, he doesn't want to deal with us right now. We'll let him be, give him time. But getting that phone call from Fordham was like, oh, something's really wrong. Because Fordham doesn't call us like this, So this is why there was such a change in Branson. About 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago, he had an argument with his dad. And so he created Branson Escapades or something like that, this hotel chain, to compete with his dad. So in this short period of time, that his company has now become like bigger than his father's. And of course, he's trying to prove to his father that he's worthy and all these great things. But the problem is, even if he does this, what he doesn't get is your father is still not going to love you because he's just a horrible human, you know? I don't even like to call him a human. He's just horrible. And so Finn kind of tells him, your dad's awful, but you still have people that love you. He's like, hell, my parents love you more than they love me, you know? And so that kind of gets him coming back, getting him out of the foul mood. And he realizes, Branson does, he was a lot closer to like falling off that edge. Like, he doesn't want to admit that shit, but he really was. He was really having a hard time. And it's kind of like Stephanie was the bright spot. And so I get why he's not trying to let go of Stephanie if that's the only light you kind of see. So Finn is like, something's up with Karina. She's trying to trick you into this marriage. And Branson says, I know it. I know something's off. I'm not going to marry her. But Finn says, but what if we can distract her? He was like, let's get the marriage license. He was like, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put Karina and Stephanie on one, and then you and me on another one. Branson's like, I don't know if that's going to work, blah, blah, blah. But he's like, it'll work. It'll work. We can do this. So Branson has already reached out to Fordham to have him, remember that's his confidant, to look out, to find out if there is a takeover going on when it comes to the Parker company. It's Parker and something, but I just remember the Parker part. Um, and exactly why she's trying to get married ASAP. So he's got Fordham looking into it. He's waiting on an answer from him. And so he's asking, he had told Finn also about the offer his dad had made. And he's thinking, like, do you think she found out about that offer? And, like, do you think that's why she's trying to push it? But, and that's a possibility. Because remember, he was in the office. What if Karina was walking past and she heard it? That's really a possibility. And I think it's supposed to be 3 years they have to be married. So she changed it too. She said, Dad saying now it can be the 90 days. We can be married for 90 days. So that's a big thing too, because this is a whole clause and you're changing that, so something has got to be up. So we'll see. We shall see. The guys come back over and let them know they're gonna go to, they'll go at least do the license tonight. And so begrudgingly Karina accepts that. But then she starts whispering to Branson about how, I know you think Stephanie's like this great person, but she's really not. She was sleeping with people while she was married. She stole from her husband, like all this type of stuff. And that, she refused the paternity test, just all this stuff. And it doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound like her. But it is kind of like, okay, could any portion of that be true? Because that's kind of the problem. Once somebody tells you something, it's kind of hard to like get it out of your mind, And that's what's happening. So they're on their way to the little chapel. And let's see if this plan is going to work. They get to the chapel. Thankfully, Stephanie has this horrible, and I do mean horrible, driver's license photo. So they took it 3 times. The first 2 times she kept closing her eyes. The third time she opened them so wide she looks bug-eyed. And so Finn was able to take that after they had Corinne sign the paper, the license. They were able to take that photo and kind of take it so to let Corinne look at it to distract her, and it worked. So that worked out. So then they left. Branson calls for the doctor, the concierge doctor, to come check on her. Karina was trying to stay behind, but Cole was like, no, come with us back down. He said something funny to her. It worked. She goes with them. So clearly her thing is Karina just like attention, child. She don't care who it comes from. Just give her some attention and she's okay. So her Stephanie's ankle is sprained. She's got to be on crutches. She's got to elevate it. All this great stuff. She wants to go ahead and put on her PJs and relax. And Branson says, I wish you would stay with me. You know, I miss having your voice in my head. And she was like, well, Karina's not going to like it, X, Y, and Z. And we might as well face the fact that, you know, she's never going to like me. And he says she has no control over anything I have going on, especially my employees. So now Stephanie's like, you know what? I don't like this. It's like a tug of war between the two of you. You know, she's basically letting me know that she can influence you and get rid of me. You're saying she can't. She's like, I don't like feeling like I'm in a tug of war between the two of you. I just need to quit. This is just too much for me. And he's like, hold on, don't do that. Don't do that. And he was like, let me explain some things to you. And they go and he tells her about the share situation, but he doesn't say that it's for that drug that Ellie takes. And she's afraid, he's afraid that if he tells her about the drug, that'll be the reason why she stays out of obligation. And she, of course, is like, what I'm not understanding is why are you marrying her if you don't love her? And he's like, it's a business arrangement. And she said something about the whole rushing of the marriage thing. And she's like, it doesn't feel right. Like something feels really off. And he says, I know, I have people checking into it. You know, I'm not going to get rushed into anything. That's not going to happen. So she changes and he's looking at her and she says, you can't look at me like that. And he was like, I knew my eyes freaked you out. And she said, no, they make me feel, and she stopped talking. And he said, no, say it. Say they make you feel disgusted. Say they're creepy. She says, no, they make me feel naked. He says, what do you mean naked? And she says, when you look at me, like I feel like I can't hide anything from you. It's like you see through me. So after she says that, in his mind, it's kind of like, whoa, maybe there's a possibility she does see me as more than just her employer. She's not disgusted by me. So then he's thinking, and then she blurts out, oh shoot, I forgot to get Ellie something for, you know, a gift. And so there's this certain type of doll. I think it's like a Brigitte doll or something. She said she's not getting that. But she told her she would get her a signed photograph of Elvis because her daughter loves Elvis. Now he, of course, is like, how the heck is that? So when she had to be in the hospital at one point, she watched like all of his, you know, movies, listened to his songs, and now she knows them all by heart. So she's a huge fan. So Branson's like, okay, we're going to get that for her. And so sure enough, he gets on it, but here's the thing. The only thing open is an Elvis wedding chapel. The name of it was something like Hunka Hunka Burning Love type of thing. So when they get out, she of course is like, oh no, we can't do this. This is a chapel, you know? And he's like, no, this is fine. This will work. So they go up and they tell the people, like, you know, we don't have a marriage license, X, Y, and Z, but they're going to go ahead and they have the ceremony. And so it's a lot for her because remember, she is in love with this man, right? So they do the vows. The people even provided rings. And then they got to the part for the kiss, and he took her face and he kissed her. It was beyond for her. Afterwards, she had a tear come down her cheek, and he was able to, he took his handkerchief and he wiped it from her eyes. And so they left out, and I think he had dropped the marriage license. And the woman, her name's Priscilla Parsons, but she's thinking about changing it to Priscilla Presley. So that way, when people get married here, they'll be getting married. The officiant will show Priscilla Presley. But anyway, she signed it because she is an officiant. And so when they get back in the limo, he's like, I know you're upset. But it was like, for him to get the photos, you had to have like a wedding package. Okay. And so that's what he did. So he could get the signed photo, he could get the video, he could get all this stuff. So he was like, yeah, we're going to go through with it. So when they get back in the limo, he tells her, I know you're upset, because he thought she was disappointed that she had to kiss him and all this type of stuff. But of course, that is so not what is wrong with her. What's wrong with her is the fact that it felt so real, and it's like it's not real, so it that's what's bothering her. And so she looks at the certificates, because, or the what is it called, the license. And here's the thing. Remember, Finn was supposed to put Finn and Branson on one, and then Stephanie and Karina on the other. But he didn't. He put Stephanie and Branson on the same one. And it's been signed, which means their asses are now married.